Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today I'm going to be going over what vehicles you should buy and what vehicles you should avoid in Grand Theft Auto Online from the Bottom Dollar Bounties DLC update that we have just got into Grand Theft Auto Online today. Now we got 9 new cars, 10 if you count the bail enforcement van, but that's already kind of a car already and it's really nothing too special. So we're going to be talking about the cars that you can actually purchase. Anyway guys, if you find this video helpful or useful, a like is of course appreciated. Subscribe if you're new and you want to see more content like this. And let's go ahead and get started with the first car. First up on the chopping block is the EST Paragon S within the sports category. This vehicle is based off of a newer Bentley and it does come with Imani tech capabilities, so you can upgrade it in your agency to have the missile lock-on jammer as well as armor plating and an oil slick proximity mine dropper. This thing is a pretty good vehicle. It is quite quick as well. I do think that the acceleration is very good. The top speed also seems like it's pretty okay. The only thing that I don't really love about the Paragon S is, in my experience driving it, the rear end of the car is really loose and doesn't seem to have very much downforce, which kind of causes a slight problem when it comes to the performance of the vehicle, because it's very fast in a straight line and everything, but then it kind of suffers in the corners a little bit, which does kind of suck. Another point against it is the fact that it does not have bullet resistant windows at all like some Imani tech cars do. It's basically a shot in the dark as to, you know, which cars with Imani tech are actually gonna have the bullet resistant windows versus which are not, and unfortunately this is not one of those cars. Another thing that I didn't really love about this car is the customization for it felt very strange. It felt like it wanted to be a super aggressive car, but be based on a very luxurious car's frame. And I'm not really sure that the upgrades integrate super well on this car in particular. I still think it's a really nice looking car. I think the performance is pretty okay, but it's just kind of a confusing car. Overall, I would say this is one to buy from this DLC. I think it is actually one of the better vehicles from the DLC. So if you guys are interested, this is one that I would say to go for. Next up, we have the Bloons N Visage, which is another sports car, and it also has Imani tech, and it's based off of the Hyundai N Vision concept car that came out sometime last year, I do believe it was. It's very futuristic looking, and it has a lot of customization, which is really, really awesome. Now, unfortunately, something that's not super awesome is the fact that it did not come with an armor plating upgrade with its Imani tech missile lock-on jammer that you can put on it. I feel like this is kind of a misstep by Rockstar. I feel like this should have had the armor plating, and maybe the Paragon S shouldn't have had the armor plating. I feel like it's a bit of, you know, a confusing scenario. I feel like the N Visage would have actually made a lot more sense to have armor plating on personally. I don't know, maybe I'm stupid, I don't know, but I feel like that should have been the way. The N Visage though was a little bit disappointing, not gonna lie. It's rear wheel drive only while being electric, but I thought that the acceleration was going to be a lot better than it actually was. It was actually really, really slow, I found. And the handling was okay. It wasn't great. It was about equivalent to the Paragon S, but just kind of a little bit worse. Or maybe not worse, but in a worse package overall. I just kind of thought that the Bloons N Visage was going to go a little bit quicker, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it is going to. However, the customization is really awesome. I do think it's a really awesome looking car. Overall, I would say I recommend picking it up. But the problem is it's $2.5 million. And for that price, I cannot recommend picking it up, especially without an armor plating upgrade to go along with the Imani tech that it has. I think that's a bit of an L. I don't know. But overall, it's probably one that I would avoid, at least for right now. Maybe get it when it goes on sale if you're really interested. Next up, we have the Ubermacht Niobe in the sports category, and this thing has an HSW upgrade for those of you on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. Now, the Niobe is a pretty cool car. It's based off of the BMW i8 in real life, which seems like a weird car to get in this DLC in my opinion, because we already have the Ubermacht SC1, which was like supposed to be an i8, but it was a really like kind of terrible version of it. So I guess it kind of makes sense to get this, but it's like we already had an Ubermacht like sort of car, like I don't know, it just doesn't really make sense to me. But it does have an HSW upgrade, and with that HSW upgrade, I'm sure this thing is crazy fast, but playing on PC, I don't get access to that. However, I did find that this car was super, super quick. The only thing that I didn't like about it was, again, the handling. The handling on this car felt kind of similar to the Paragon S, except this thing seemed to understeer a little bit more than the Paragon S did. And then the rear end was also very like floaty. It didn't really seem to grip too well. However, it was pretty good to drive overall, and of course you can go and watch all the customizations and reviews out on my channel if you want a more in-depth breakdown of any of these cars. Overall, the Niobe though was pretty good. It had really nice customization. I think it's a great looking car. Straight line performance was awesome. The handling wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't terrible. Overall, this is one that I would recommend looking into, and especially if you have HSW on the platform you play on, it's kind of a no-brainer. This thing's going to be really fast. I would definitely go for it. Next up, we have the Anis Euros X32 in the Coupes category, and it also has an HSW upgrade available for it. This is of course based off of the Nissan 300ZX in real life, which is a really cool car, and the customization for this thing was fairly good. I feel like the model for the car itself was a little bit off. I was kind of slightly disappointed with how it kind of turned out. It feels really high up on the rear end of the car, and then the front end is like super low down. I didn't really love the look, but it is still a pretty good car, and as far as coupes go, I think it's actually probably going to be one of the faster coupes. And then with HSW on top of it, I would assume this is probably going to be the new fastest coupe in the entire game, with HSW obviously included. Now, without HSW, it might not be the fastest. It is probably pretty up there though. I would say the performance was kind of similar to the Fathom FR36 that we got back in December. So I think it's going to be a pretty cool car. The customization is nice. It's fun to drive. It actually handles pretty well, better than some of the other cars we've already talked about on the list. I would say this is one that I would recommend actually picking up. I think it is a pretty good vehicle, and especially if you can get that HSW upgrade for it. Next up, we have the Invitero Coquette D1 in the Sports Classic category. The D1 was a little bit disappointing for me, I'm not going to lie. I think that the customization was a little bit weak, and it just basically reminded me a lot of the Invitero Coquette Blackfin that we got back in like maybe 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere in that neighborhood. In fact, it shares the exact same sound effect, and the driving performance was really similar, other than that the Coquette Blackfin is in the muscle category and this is a sports classic. But I feel like if this was in the muscle category, it would probably just feel like a reskin of the Blackfin, because I think they might be the same car. I'm not gonna lie. The handling is pretty okay on this thing, despite the lack of a spoiler option, which I feel like is kind of a massive L to not have a spoiler option on a car in 2024. Seems kind of weak to me, but it does sound really good, and as a driver's car for just, you know, around in free mode, I think this thing's actually pretty awesome. It does have, you know, enough customization to sort of satisfy, but as far as racing goes, it's definitely not going to be anywhere close to like the Turismo Classic or the Grotti Cheetah Classic for that matter, and especially if the Turismo has HSW as well. So racing performance and overall performance, not the greatest car ever. However, as a nice car to drive around in free mode, you kind of can't go wrong with it. Kind of make that decision on your own. I can't really say whether you should buy it or not. It basically depends what you like to do. If you like to race, I'd say no. If you want it for free mode, I'd say yeah, probably. Next up, we have the DeClassy Yosemite 1500 in the off-road category. This is actually the vehicle I was most excited for today when I saw it was released into GTA Online on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, and then I customized it and I found the customization to be really upsetting. It was not very great. There were a lot of like kind of cool options, but the thing is the wheels are too skinny and they're too far within the fender lines, so it just kind of looks silly in my opinion. Obviously it would have been nice to get like a lift kit or something like that, but that's obviously way too much to ask for at this point in GTA 5. I think that the engine probably just doesn't even know how to, you know, interact with that sort of thing. So the 1500 was, it was cool. It was a really fun vehicle to drive. I actually enjoyed driving it a lot. It was the least disappointing of all the cars from this DLC, in my opinion. I think that it was, you know, about exactly as I expected it to be, and it was relatively capable off-road. The customization was all right. I would have liked to see a few more things for it, but overall, for like the 1.25 million that it costs, you kind of can't go wrong with it. I think it's pretty good looking. It's kind of cool to have one of these Chevys in the game now. I'm pretty thrilled about it, but maybe I'm a little bit biased. Overall, I think it's definitely one that you should look into at the least, but maybe not one that is for everybody. If you're into off-roading, if you're into trucks, I'd say probably you're going to want it. However, if you're not into trucks or off-roading or off-road racing, I think you could probably avoid it, to be honest. Next up, we have our first police vehicle, and that is the Declasse Impaler SC Cruiser within the emergency vehicles category. This thing was really disappointing, and I didn't have high expectations to begin with, so to be honest, I guess it was about as I expected. It's just not that cool and not that good. It's basically just the Impaler SZ again, but with police lights slapped on the top and some liveries and stuff. It's not really that great of a vehicle. If you're gonna buy a cop car, I think this is the absolute last one you should ever buy. I don't think it's a good vehicle. I think it's kind of boring as far as police cars even go. I just would say avoid the Impaler SC Cruiser. Like, it goes around corners fine and the performance is actually fine, to be honest. It's about what I would have expected. I just think it's a really boring and really kind of ugly looking car, and some of the customization options you can do for it just make absolutely no sense to me. But maybe I was looking for something that I should have been looking for out of this car, but overall I would say avoid the SC Cruiser. However, the Bravado Dorado Cruiser, also within the emergency vehicle category, is a pretty cool and interesting police vehicle because of its off-road sort of capabilities and styling. It had some pretty good customization that I felt was actually still fitting for it to be a police car that was obviously ripped straight from the regular Bravado Dorado. It's not like they made a separate model, it's basically the exact same, but they added police stuff to it. I felt like this one was pretty good though, and I actually felt like the performance was also quite good. It is all-wheel drive, of course, so it's going to get a good launch off the line. The acceleration's decent, and it has an okay top speed for being an old, Durango SUV. It's actually a pretty cool vehicle, and I think for off-roading and for, role play scenarios and stuff like that, I think this is going to be a pretty fun car. It does come in at $5 million, which is only $400,000 cheaper than the Bravado Gauntlet Interceptor, which objectively is probably a much better car because it's so much faster and probably handles better as well. But of course, the Dorado, you're paying for it because of the off-road capabilities that it has. So do keep that in mind. Overall, it is one that I would say I do recommend if you want to get one of the new police cars, and if you don't mind spending $5 million for one police car, which is ridiculous, by the way, I will just say that now. But if you're into that sort of thing, it's probably going to be worth it for you to pick this one up. And last but not least, we have the Bravado Greenwood Cruiser, also in the emergency category. This one is a lot better than the Impaler SZ Cruiser. However, it's not as good as the Dorado, in my opinion at least. It is pretty cool though, because it is an old police car. It's kind of like from the era of like Dukes of Hazzard or the Blues Brothers, for example. So with that, you could definitely do some cool stuff. And it's a relatively good performing car. The regular Bravado Greenwood is actually a decent car in GTA Online. It's not bad, and it also has a Monty Tech, which is a bonus. The Cruiser, unfortunately, does not have a Monty Tech or anything like that, but it does share similar performance to the regular Bravado Greenwood. And I would say if you want, an older style police car, this is probably the one to get. I don't think the SZ Cruiser outperforms this thing. I don't think it's better in any singular way. I think the Greenwood looks better, it performs better, it has better customization. Overall, the Greenwood is just the simply superior car, in my opinion at least. Obviously, if you want the SC Cruiser, you really like it, then get that. But I would recommend to get the Greenwood over the SC Cruiser if you want to buy one of the two. However, I would still probably consider the Dorado to be the best police car from this DLC, so do keep that in mind. Now, we did also get some upgrades to the Volcar Nebula Turbo, as well as the Ubermacht Cypher and the Ubermacht Sentinel Classic Widebody. All three of those were actually given the drift tuning upgrade. So if you guys are interested in that, those three cars do have drift tuning now, which is pretty cool. So definitely check that out if you guys are interested. But that is pretty much it. That's been it for what cars to buy and what cars to avoid from the Bottom Dollar Bounties DLC in Grand Theft Auto Online. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you learned something, a like is of course appreciated. If not, dislike, of course. Subscribe to my channel if you guys are new and you want to see more helpful content like this or various other styles of content as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.